Who is Ivan? I grew up in Chicago, and it was kind of the inner city, and it was the Lakeview area, Albany Park area. Um, Grew up with some childhood trauma, which I think a lot of us go through, and it was a good experience though. It made me an adult quickly, and um, I'll just go ahead and say it, like alcoholic father, like traumatized mother, and having to basically become an adult for them, so I could fill the gaps. At the same time, I'm really grateful for everything they did as best they could, because obviously it made me who I am today. I have this thick skin, this amazing person that is not really fazed by, oh, they didn't make my mocha frappuccino the way I like it. Oh, this is the worst day of my life. you know? So, it taught me to appreciate a lot of things. One thing that my father really ingrained in us was that entrepreneurial spirit. Even though he had these habits, which a lot of us can fall into easily, he encouraged us to do things that would make us outside of our comfort zone. He actually took that to a pretty dangerous degree when he applied for a job which he had to drive a forklift without knowing how to drive a forklift. But so that put somebody's life in danger, even though they just laughed it off after. But going after things just to learn it, he would do. He even started his own like tax type company business, helping people with their accounting. So he had a very deep, ingrained education and entrepreneurial spirit. Probably when I was 12. I didn't really like being poor. I saw that a lot of my friends were going out, on a weekly basis, but I didn't have much, so I couldn't do that. And if I did, I had some sort of guilt attached to it, like, oh, we can't give you an allowance because it's just not, in the best interest of the family. When I knew there was other types of things going on, like she was saving or he was saving. So it produced I have to deal with this on my own thought process. I can't depend on others. Therefore, I have to start my own business, coding websites, designing websites, and learn how to make that money. Make that moolah, yo. When I was 27, I had a actually really amazing manager. And she told me straight up, I don't think this is actually what you want to do with your heart. Being a senior web developer, sure you could keep forcing yourself to do this, but I know in your heart, this isn't your long-term goal. You're better off as a manager or something else to that effect. And it was hard for me to take in because growing up in Chicago, when you say you're gonna do something, you better do it. Like your word is on the line. A lot of my family members would say stuff but not follow through on their word. And so I felt, since I started off down this path for web development, I need to follow through even though it hurts me. And with enough nudging, my manager, I came to realize what she said was true. So I plotted my escape from the rat cage, as my book is called, From Minimum Wage to Leaving the Rat Cage. And the funny thing is, I secretly did it so I wouldn't be liable at work. Like, right? I had this illusion in my head, like, oh, they're gonna come after you if you tell them what your plan is. But when I told my manager I was leaving, the 1 month, 2 week notice, whatever it was, she was like, whoa, I'm happy for you. Why didn't you tell me this before? And I said, oh, because I thought you might want to fire me or something. She was like, that's the last thing on my mind. I actually want you to grow. And that was a powerful thing to hear. She's like a evolved manager, basically. She's not looking out for her best interests. She actually wants her people to grow. When I left Turner, that was about 10 years into my web development career. I always had the feeling in the back of my head of, man, I know I'm great at socializing with people, great at having relationships, great at investing, because at the time I had several properties, even invested in a warehouse, but I still had that fear in my belly that I can't do this full time, even though all the facts say that I could, even though I've done all the research, went and studied all the programs that I needed to. So my heart ended up just taking over. And in the year before I left, I decided to completely focus all my energy on leaving my job because I was not happy. I found out like really quickly after I left my job that I was really a lot happier being in relationships with people, helping people find their houses, renovating houses, giving dream homes to people. So I flipped houses for several months after I left my job, and I was a lot happier, but there was another issue that came up. And I like to describe what we are all in life as a cage. In one aspect of our life or another, we're in some sort of a cage. And the cage is defined of four walls. There's complacency, there's atrophy, there's guilt, and then there's empathy. Those are the four phases that we all go through. And for me, I got stuck in a cycle of complacency, flipping houses. And I wouldn't get up until noon sometimes. I wouldn't have any motivation. I was complacent with that. And it was sad because I guess my body was also telling me like, you're not good enough to do this. You should belong in some other place like a job where everyone else is. A lot of negative self-thought happened. So what was supposed to be amazingly joyful, leaving my job, ended up being one of the biggest depressing moments of my life. Until I realized once I have a mission that is bigger than myself, not based on money, then I could attack a lot stronger. Then I could push a lot stronger. And that's when I thought of the mission to do a lot more affordable housing, have a cycle from the hot markets of town and push it into affordable housing so that people could actually stay in their homes, in their apartments. And a big realization out of that was in my own childhood, I got pushed out of my apartment. Like my mom, she couldn't afford the increasing rents every year. So every year we would move. And so that was the result of me digging into my childhood trauma too. I would lose friends, obviously, when I would switch schools. I would have a bigger commute. Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty close thing to my heart because it wouldn't just affect me, it would affect also my father, my mother. They lived in separate homes, being divorced. And it would just add all sorts of stress in addition to the already existing pain that we had in our lives. So I just don't know how people do it. I don't know how we did it. Stability in a home, I think, is first and foremost. And now that I'm an adult, I could see that. At the same time, though, I'm grateful that it happened because I was taught to make friends in 5 minutes, right? But on the opposing side of that, I couldn't attach myself. Because if I attached myself, I would get hurt. Because I had to move again in another year or another month in some cases. the main central reason why is to help people avoid the same pain, right? That our city of Atlanta is going through pretty heavily right now. Has been going through for over 5 years. Basically trying to avoid the replication that happened in Chicago here as much as possible. The way I approach it is from a capitalistic view. I don't depend on government subsidies, anybody's help. It's a matter of, hey, the stock market does average 7% returns. Real estate, I know I beat out 10, 20% returns. And how do I apply that into affordable housing? And that was an easy answer for me, because I've already done it over the last 10 years. You know, when I was at Turner, even I was investing in rental properties. And I do want to still say though, my main business right now doesn't involve actual investing of my own money. And I want that to be key for everybody to know. But going back to how I invested in rental properties, I had the habit of helping low-income people, even an ex-convict of 12 years. He came out of jail, he was living a roommate with me, and his parole officer would come every morning at 7 a.m. And this guy was clearly a cool dude to me, seemed to have been reformed with the Lord, and I'm glad that I took that risk, because he's now one of my preferred electricians. He's a certified electrician. So when I think about that, I think about, what opportunities have been missed when I was growing up in Chicago, of landlords just giving up on people because they just wanted an extra $100, $200, whatever amount. Investing shouldn't just be about money, it should be about people. When I figured out a way to have those 10, 20% returns, I started to tell my friends about it. You know, I started obviously to do it myself a lot more. If I just break it down in a simple way mathematically, I could buy a house for $50,000 today. I could rent it for $600, which is affordable to the average person, especially in town. That's actually preferred rent. If you multiply 600 times 12, you're about 7,200, I believe. So let's just deduct $1,000 of taxes, insurance. So I'm still hitting a 10% minimum margin on my yearly return. Plus, I'm helping a potential family actually invest in themselves, have a stable home, not be pushed out at the first instance that I want to make more money. I just look back at how I invested in my rental properties. I wasn't looking at maximum dollar value. I was looking at, hey, how could I pay maybe $500 or get paid $500 over my mortgage? And it just turned out that I was buying low enough I was making that profit, and in addition getting those rents. So I'm building equity, like wealth for myself, while at the same time helping these folks that are, to be honest, like brothers to me, sisters to me, and they deserve an opportunity to make a better life for themselves. That electrician I told you about, he lived with me for about 2 years and was able to buy his own giant, like 3,000 square foot house. But he's there with his family, living happily. His wife is very grateful that I'm in his life. I'm very grateful he's in my life. And it's just been a beautiful thing.